Mentioned about how you're thinking of running for something for mayor, but you'd be worried about whether you knew enough to do it. Don't worry about that. It's everybody in local office, I think, is an amateur, and most people don't know what they're doing. They're making it up as they go.
I know.
And chances are, if they're a party politician or something, they got there just by showing up enough times and got put in that spot. So just with a little effort, you could know as much as that. It's not that hard. Hi everybody, I'm Mike Sellers, mayor of the village of Cobleskill in upstate New York. It's about a half-hour west of Albany. 22 years old, I'm the youngest mayor in the state of New York, elected at 21. Was real active in the SUNY Albany campus reads. That's how I got my golden new party, and then moved home and decided to run for mayor. In a kind of a funny race, the incumbent mayor was being challenged by both Republicans, the two guys running, the incumbent being challenged by a real crazy right-wing businessman, and this guy probably was going to win just because the incumbent had never run against anybody, didn't know anything about running campaigns. Was an okay mayor, I guess, but obviously I didn't see eye to eye with him. But this third guy, he was running, probably going to win, he was real active, huge ads in the paper, and all this stuff was anti-taxing, anti-regulation, and stuff people really eat up for. So I went around to all the local progressive liberals, tried to get them to run for office, older people, not just too young to run, and telling them I'd run their campaign I could ensure that they'd win, and couldn't get any takers, so then I threw my hat in the ring just to sort of prove that I could get elected, and after that everybody else wanted to run, so I started to get good press. You should drop out now and let me run, you're too young and stupid. But obviously I stuck with it and got elected and been in office for about a year and a half now. But the biggest point I want to make about running for local offices, that's what I know about, is the thing people tend to forget about how you get elected. That campaigns don't have so much to do with the bumper stickers and the flyering and all that fun stuff, the window dressing that people get excited about. All that, the secret to getting elected, all it really is about is getting more votes than the other guy. There's nothing more to it. And I think people tend to forget that when they get into a campaign, and they think, I need to prove to everybody that I've got the best issue, I've got the best platform, and I'm better than everybody. You don't really need to prove that. You just need to get one more vote than half of the votes that get casted in that election to go away. If that makes sense, right? So, what you do, what I did is went door to door, asked people, will you vote for me? I had a list from the Board of Elections that all the registered voters. Found out who was going to vote for me and who wouldn't. Sort of tracked that with the number system of 1 through 5. One being people that I could count on voting for me definitely, and 5 being that were completely against me, 2, 3, 4, everything in between. And then basically on election day, did the get out the vote thing, calling people up, dragging them to the polls, poll watchers at the polls, tracking who's been in and voted, and it's as simple as that. But the point I'm trying to make is that worrying about having the best issues or the sexiest platform or the coolest bumper stickers, it's important, don't get me wrong, but the thing I think people forget more than anything is that you got to count the votes, you got to count the voters and who's going to vote for you on election day. That's all that really matters.
In my opinion, one of the first things that you should do with a voter list is to go down and have each candidate go through and pick out their people, pick out the people that you know are going to come, have your next in line in terms of your campaign team go through so that you're not wasting your efforts. I don't need someone to go knock on the door of someone that I've been close friends with for 15 years. I just need to pick up the phone on that day and say, hey, did you vote yet? Not, are you going to, but just knowing. So it's sort of, in a sense, weeding out your strongest potential voters, and then working on the list from that to see who you need to visit. Making a phone call early on. How do you think you're going to vote? Are there questions that you have? Would you like me to stop by? Would you like the candidate to stop by if it's a volunteer making those calls? So getting a lot of that stuff cleaned up in advance really helps a lot when it comes down to election day. Do you need a ride to the polls? Things like that. And to kind of look at the structure of the way this workshop was set up, there were 4 items that were mapped out. Public relations was one of them. And one thing that we always, as far as the New Paltz Greens are concerned, agree to do is to run a positive campaign. We do not ever say anything negative about our opponents. We say positive things about us, what our intentions are, where we see our community can go under our leadership. And once we're in office, make it come true. And it's really not that hard to do. And people are so amazed when they see these campaign promises come through, which seem huge. But when you've got a green platform behind you, it's not that hard to put these policies in place. I'm not going to go into the things that we did because this is not what it's about, but that really wasn't that hard to do. And another thing in terms of public relations, you cannot assume that everyone is picking up the paper and following what's happening within an election cycle. I live in a community that has a weekly paper that most people read, but then there are 4 other surrounding community dailies that people read as well. But in some communities, people don't care about what they're writing in the papers, because first of all, we always know that the media isn't necessarily going to cover things in the way that we want to hear about the things that we're concerned about. So one of the things that we did in terms of PR, and it also relates to the volunteer coordination aspect and visibility, we had a pretty good core of volunteers coming together. We had weekly meetings that were a set time. We were fortunate in that we had a local yoga studio where the owner of the studio agreed to offer us her space. So we had a room that was set aside. It was a decent size. We could fit 50 volunteers in there if we needed to. And that really made a big difference. It was comfortable to come to a volunteer meeting. And the meetings were also very organized, and the space really added to that aspect as well. I myself, I ran with 2 other people. There were 3 of us all together. I had 2 people who were constantly with me. If I was not at work, these 2 people were with me. They were wearing T-shirts that said "Vote" with the date on the back, the 3 last names of the candidates, and we made our symbol at the time for our campaign was a hand. So we handmade these, taking my hand, white paint against black, and then we had all of our shirts that had a personalized, symbol on it. And they wore these shirts every day, going into coffee shops, going into local restaurants, just really being out there so that the people who aren't picking up the paper, who aren't following the local election, because they never have followed the local election because it didn't interest them until we were running, until they saw people that they knew in the community wearing these shirts and all this excitement going on about this campaign that had never happened before. So, in terms of visibility, we definitely did not have a problem there. And like I said, I had 2 people with me constantly, and one on either side wearing the shirt. In the middle there I was the candidate. And it was, it made such a big difference in terms of my being able to speak to people, in terms of getting petitions signed, because as a team, they could be saying, blah, 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 blah. This is Rebecca. She's the one I'm asking you to sign the petition for. You could have a whole bunch of petitions going on at once where point to the candidate, Who are you signing for? Right there. Go as a team. Go to the county fairs. You know, we went to every public event that we could. Going into the bars when there's bands playing, go up and ask the band, do you mind if we make a quick announcement? This is Rebecca Rotzler. She's running for village trustee. She's one of us. Can we announce the campaign? Can we talk to people? We also did small events in coffee houses, asking bands to perform and, you know, charging a small fee at the door, $5, $3 if you come in for free if you want to. So that also made a big difference because the people in the community felt like we were reaching out directly to them and we weren't going to alienate them based on their economic status or whatever else. It was a very comfortable environment for them to come and hear what we had to say. And also with that, we were able to set up the debates. Now, you know, on a national level, we all know the issues that we deal with in terms of trying to get our candidates into debates. Well, the last person they led into the debates was Ross Perot, outside of the Democrat and Republican parties, because he did really well. It made a difference at the polls. They're not going to allow third-party candidates into these debates so easily anymore because it makes a difference ultimately in the vote. You know, and there's most of us are very familiar with what happens with all of that. But what we were doing on a local level was getting our local college, speaking to the professors in poli-sci departments, communication studies departments, any professor that we knew would have a sense of the importance of not only the debate in terms of just what it lends to politics, but also what it could mean to their students. Having the students who are registered voters who really need to have that experience and have that interaction with candidates. So we were able to get these professors to agree to host debates on campus where all the candidates would come out. We would do it locally at the town hall, you know, just wherever we could, and just really push forward the idea that we need these debates. Otherwise, they're not going to hear our messages. And then having it televised. We have local public access TV. So we were able to get all these debates televised. And also being really, really prepared, studying on the issues, having these back and forths, little, almost as if you're studying for a big test. Where do we stand on this issue? What is the history on this issue and that issue? And then once we're in the debates, having you know, a really good knowledge of what was actually going to take place there, and having our campaign volunteers there ready to ask questions. They might be questions that have never been asked within this community before. You know, the read-bet system that we put in. It was something that we knew could work, but yet, was it ever going to come up if we didn't bring it up? Probably not. Were people in the community going to know what we were talking about? Probably not. So we had all these different forums that we created where we were able to talk about these different issues and actually get people excited about what was going on. And you know, ultimately it worked. And then, you know, most recently we had Dr. Edgar Rodriguez elected to the New Paltz School Board, and you know, he was another campaign where we used all of those strategies again. You know, giving people rides to the polls. You know, just those little things that made such a big difference to the people in our community, so that they knew that we really cared about representing them. And ultimately, it did work. And I have I brought with me the CD of our last village board meeting, which was my final meeting. I didn't run for re-election, but it's kind of fun if anyone wants to take a peek at it over the weekend. That was another thing. We started televising our meetings once we were in office and really making it known that we wanted the community to be a part of these meetings and to come out and tell us what they were concerned about. Not, you know, just on the streets or what have you, but actually coming to the meetings and putting it on our agenda. Write us a letter. send us a 2-line email, and your issue is going to be on our agenda. So all of that, with the public relations and just really being, continuing to be visible in terms of getting out there in the community really makes a big difference in terms of following through on your campaign goals. And like I said, if anyone wants to see this last meeting, it's kind of funny. I had a conversation with someone within the community a few days ago who I had spoken to once before briefly, but he had questions about the Green Party. And so we had this great dialogue. We're answering all these questions. And twice, I thought it was really funny, and I thought you all would too. Twice during our conversation, he would stop and say, I feel like I'm talking to a TV star. And it's just because of all those televised meetings. And it's like, okay, I know you know this, and I know you know that. So it was really fun to be able to, 4 years later, step out and be in that position to be able to, have that kind of dialogue.
I just want to pick up on one thing she said about being able to control the debates. That the thing about this party, the Green Party, is it's really difficult to win at state and national level, obviously, because you need to raise a ton of money or get that media coverage. That's difficult to do without corporate backing. But at the local level, because you can get into the debates, and because campaigns are not that expensive, you can raise a couple of grand without too much trouble. Winning local office at the local level is not that difficult to do. And, all of you should try to do it at some point. But, should we open up the questions now? Do you have any questions for us?
I have 2 questions. What do you do when your opponent goes negative against you? And second, the list that you gave, did you have a problem with them being not up to date? The voter list.
The question was, what do you do when your opponent goes negative? And the second part of the question is, if the voter list you get from the Board of Elections aren't up to date or any good. I usually just ignore negative stuff. I don't know if that's the best strategy always, but it's all I know to do. You can get other people to write letters to the editor in response to negative newspaper articles or things like this. But I think the best strategy is to ignore it and stay positive. And in the long run, people react much better to that than any sort of negative stuff. As for the list, mine were pretty good all the time, so I didn't really have a problem with them being bad. But if they were, you just keep following up. Is that an issue you've had in your experience? Or
well, I haven't done it yet, but I got a list of Green Party members in New York City that were outdated. So I was wondering if there was a problem, as far as the disclosure.
I'm from a pretty small rural county, and it's pretty easy to get access to that stuff. I don't know what it is like in the city or other places.
I'll send some questions. Yeah, I agree with Mike in terms of the negative campaigning from your opponents. We also, with all of our campaigns, do the same thing. We stay positive. It's not worth the energy to get into a debate. I mean, we see how much energy debates take up on our internal Green Party lists. You don't need to be doing half of that during a campaign. It's all about getting your message out. And one thing that's very important about regular campaign meetings with all of your campaign staff is to deal with issues like that. If your opponent is saying X, Y, Z about you, your campaign staff, not just you, needs to know how to respond. You need to know how to respond in a positive way. If someone is saying, well, he said that this sewage treatment plant does X, Y, and Z, and well, it doesn't compute, these are the numbers, you need to be able to tell your campaign staff, well, this person is giving misinformation, they are leaving out the fact that ABC. And really having your campaign staff ready to answer a question just as if that person was you speaking to the voter. That's really important, and always just staying on top of that type of thing. You don't have to answer back, but you need to be able to tell the truth to the voters and always remain truthful and positive. And as far as the voter list, we did find at one point that a number of us who had registered green within our community did not show up on those lists that came through, and it had to be this scramble to go through and contact one by one everyone that we knew and get a list and go back to the BOE and find out where they had misplaced that year of registrations and really refile everything again. And and that's also where what I said earlier about everyone physically going through the list and pulling out those names and making sure that you know that the people you know are registered are still on those lists. And then going back to the BOE and saying, hey, this person registered, what's the problem, how do we fix it? There was someone over here next, and then we'll go back.
Yeah, what was the signature requirements for your offices? How many signatures did you have to get the petitions?
Ours were a little over 100. Yeah, where it's where the New Paltz is a village within a town, so we basically got a population of about 12,000 within the town. That also includes the village, which is 6,000, and it was a small percentage of the registered voters that you needed to gather.
Okay, what was the percentage? Like 2% or?
Brittany, what?
It's actually anything over 5,000. It's just 100%.
Okay. Brittany Turner is a Green, and she's also the village clerk now for the village of New Paltz. We're very fortunate.
Yeah, another question on the debates. Mike, you were mayor of a fairly small village. Was there a debate? And if so, who organized it? And how were you able to get in simply because you were running official candidate for mayor?
Yeah. Usually there's not debates. Usually elections. Until real recently, we had spring elections, and nobody would even know when they were and wouldn't vote. I think New Paltz still has spring elections. Most villages do. Recently, Cobleskill switched to have our county run the elections, and they're in November, so a lot more people are starting to vote them. And because this is a three-way race, this race was sort of like the biggest deal in our county for a while. It's, you get this young kid running, then this crazy businessman, and then the old codger, the incumbent. It was a really great story. It's like a freak show or something. Yeah. But yeah, I went to the community library and had them organize the debates for us. So that's how I got in.
So if you had gone to the library, they probably and asked them to organize, or it may not have been a debate at all. Then.
Probably not.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Also with us, one of the people who organized, there were several debates that went on. One that went on at the town hall, which was really good. There was a lot of candidates in that election on 3 different slates. That was partially organized by Green Party, but also one of our local libertarians was incredibly excited about our campaign, and I think that he knew just as well as other third-party enrollees that we had a really, really good chance, and he was the MC and did a lot of work toward our debate, so that helped. And I think if it wasn't for us third parties putting on and pushing these debates, they wouldn't have happened, and they definitely made a significant difference, like you were saying.
Yeah, I'd just like to emphasize again, what you said about one of the joys of running for local office is that it doesn't cost a whole heck of a lot. I mean, I won re-election this past fall, got 57,000 votes and spent less than $1,000. And this is down in North Carolina. So, I mean, it doesn't have to cost a whole lot. And if a Green spends a whole lot of money, people kind of get a little nervous.
Yes. Yeah, keep your literature low-key, a non-bleached, recycled.
In every election where in Connecticut, places where people have got elected, they developed a system where they checked off these people are going to work, you can definitely vote for us, one, and go through that list and have your volunteers continue to work on that. Continue to update your databases as to who's people, who's giving you money. Maybe they'll give you a little bit more. They only gave you 25. Maybe you can get an extra 25 real close to the election. All of those kinds of things are available. And I also think of, as they go along, you're training another generation for the future races too. That maybe these people will, get a chance to work in your election and consider running themselves in the future election. Right. And if it's not a daunting task, oh my God, I can't run for office. If they see how, it's day in and day out work, right. Something they can manage, they'll be more likely to run this.
Right. Well, one of the things that we were doing also was sort of this, what level of dedication, for lack of a better word, can you commit to? Can you be our candidate in this election? Okay, if you can't be our candidate, can you be on the campaign team or campaign manager, fundraiser, treasurer, or what have you? Okay, if you can't, can you be a volunteer? Can you make phone calls? Okay, you can't make phone calls, you're shy. Can you put stamps on postcards? The list goes on and on. Can you drive? Just these little things that really lead up to a really strong team. And it really doesn't have to be someone who's that outgoing and charismatic or what have you to make for a winning campaign team. Definitely agree with that. It helps a lot. Something. One of the things that in my mind we did was looking at the 10 key values and seeing how those 10 key values could apply to local issues. And from that, we were able to break it down into these different, I wish I had a campaign literature. It's becoming, more of a collector's item, and I don't even know if I have any more of them anymore. But, breaking it down into different facets of the community that could benefit from these issues. Obviously the environment was very easy in the reed beds and putting in, solar panels and all of that, make a big difference. But then also looking at our nonviolence key value and applying it to, and applying the value of nonviolence to what our objectives were on the environmental level. Well, if you're reducing your dependence on fossil fuels, we all know that so many wars, we know wars have a heck of a lot to do with fossil fuels. There's a little bit of balance there. So just, look in terms of things that we wanted to do for education, the youth, senior citizens, all of our social justice issues. Social justice, gay weddings. Okay, it's like very easy, in my opinion, to take our 10 key values and put a little bit of thought into it and apply our 10 key values on the local level, because we're very familiar with what they mean on a global and national level, but to put them, just take the nuts and bolts of those 10 key values and apply it locally. And, in a conversation, yes, these are the things that we want to do. Oh, you don't know about the Green Party? Well, we have this thing called the 10 key values, and this is how they apply on a local level. So, I'm glad in spite of being a Green, it was a wonderful thing to do.
So to fix the sewer, maybe we do the same thing the Republican mayor does. We find a contractor to fix it, but we make a point of it being a local contractor. We don't pretend we can fix it ourselves, but we say we'll use the 10 key values to figure out how we're going to fix it.
Yes, and also, our union contracts with the Department of Public Works employees, adopting sweatshop free purchasing for those union employees. Why should they be wearing, sweatshop attire that's not union made if they're union and the community is paying for them to be union and that also becomes something global applied locally.
And one great thing that local Greens can do is get prepared to run for local office. Get on your local commissions, get on your local boards. That way you can find out about this stuff. I mean, as I prepare to run for higher office, I'm on my local stormwater advisory committee. I'm on the local utility board. I'm on the local historic preservation board. And that way you know the issues before you get into office.
Sure.
And you know how to solve the issues and you know who to talk to about the issues.
And you also have that on your bio. If you have served on a committee, if you've been a chair of a committee, you know, just a quick list in New Paltz. We had someone on the village planning board. We've got at least 2 or 3 Greens on the town planning board, which is pretty major. Our environmental conservation commissions, both town and village, are very heavy green. Our local bicycle pedestrian committee, which we were a big factor, it was kind of born out of a transportation and land use study that we had done for 3 or 4 years, which was a major project within our community. And a bunch of us ended up on this bicycle pedestrian subcommittee, which then became adopted as official committee, both town and village. And there's a number of us who are Greens on that as well. So yeah, that absolutely is very big. And at our local meetings, when we're talking about candidates, we're also talking about these volunteer boards and what positions are opening up and who do we have who can be there. And then once there's an election opening up, oh, do we take this person from this board or that board, you know, to be our candidate? And, you know, so that's such a very important point. And just attending the meetings and knowing what's going on and having an influence, because, you know, both Jason and I, years before we were candidates, and certainly candidates together are working on each other's campaigns, we were at these meetings and we were able to do some significant things. Just one quick example. I was called, you know, things would happen and I'll get a phone call, you got to help out with this. Our police department was trying to purchase a pepper spray gun. And I was a veteran of the Seattle 99 events, and then, you know, a number of the big protests following that. So when the whole pepper spray thing came up, people were like, oh my God, tell Rebecca, she's been tear gassed and everything else, you know, get her over here. So I ended up in a meeting with our chief of police, and he was trying to tell us how safe this gun was. And I asked to see the manual. And within that manual, I was looking for the disclaimers. Found them right away, memorized them, walked out of that meeting, went to the next town board meeting, and I told them every situation where this gun was lethal. And they were able to turn down that gun based upon those facts. And, you know, the police chief was sitting there like, what just happened? And, you know, right, you know, so it is really important to stay on top of local issues, and it could take one little thing like that to really have such a significant impact on the community, and then the community knows, oh, it was those Greens. Great, you know, so very important.
Mike, could you also just answer that question too?
Oh.
Governance in the Green Party?
Well, I just wanted to touch on the part you mentioned about how you're thinking of running for something for mayor, but you'd be worried about whether you do enough to do it. Don't worry about that. It's everybody in local office, I think, is an amateur, and most people don't know what they're doing. They're making it up as they go.
I know.
And chances are, if they're a party politician or something, they got there just by showing up enough times and got put in that spot. So just with a little effort, you could know as much as that. It's not
One question. When I ran for judge of elections, this is in Swarthmore a couple of years ago in Pennsylvania, I ran into what I call the native mythology, where people were saying, well, it's because of native that we have Bush and all of this stuff.
Right.
And I had one or two reactions. Either I could try and explain the whole thing, which would just get into a debate, or I could just say, you know, I'm running for judge of elections, and just switch it back to that. You're unintended that.
Yeah, a lot. But I think the second strategy is smarter. It's not worth debating people about national politics when you're running for judge of elections or mayor.
let me just chime in, and also, as someone who's asked probably 500 or more people to run for office, I get those kinds of questions all the time. And I think the next one aspect for continuing to have more campaign workshops and things to let people know how they can do it is to do the things, is to network our office holders to say, here's an idea that's working in our community. And I'll give two quick examples. Jason's marrying people caused, as everybody knows, a national discussion and a national debate, including, the opportunist Democrat in San Francisco who said, hey, he can do that, I'll do that. And actually, a lot of people thought that this guy in San Francisco did it first, that sort of stuff. But that caused tremendous debate in Connecticut about the whole issue of equal opportunity in gay marriage. It came about that close to having, a full marriage for gay people in Connecticut because of that. Things like the ban on plastic trash bags in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Connecticut is really taking those issues very seriously. So is on your solar panels. All of Connecticut towns now are talking about installing solar panels on their buildings and all this sort of stuff, and it's because of the work that we and your cities and others have done. So stressing to local people, you will affect national legislation, national issues in your local race. You will cause people to change the way they really do things, and you won't be just burdened with tremendous amounts of work and no reward. You will be affecting people. So that's a great thing to tell people who consider running for office. You will affect national policy.
I think Jeff back there. And then if there's anyone else who hasn't asked a question.
How would you, as a village deputy mayor, now New York State, all the municipalities and small cities and incorporated villages in the state of New York raised their taxes double digits. How did you, in the village of New Paltz, manage to lower your taxes in the double digits as compared to the other villages that raised their taxes?
Wow.
I want to know what's going on.
I think, one of the things is taking that budget and layer by layer by layer by layer going through it.
And
Because
increasing the services too.
Right, exactly. Yeah. One thing that you will find with many budgets is that no one is doing that. They're saying, okay, this line item is in there because it's been there every year, blah, blah, blah. And, unless you really have a realistic budget where you go through line item by line item, you're not going to find that you can lower taxes and save, in different ways. It's pretty complex. I mean, there's definitely a lot of things that we went through, and at the same time, looking at efficiency, we certainly did not walk into an efficient system, and being able to kind of tweak things here and there and get some get different things up to speed. And if you look at putting in solar panels and a reed bed system, things like that have pretty quick payback in terms of not costing the taxpayer X number of dollars next year in electricity, or the trucking cost to take sludge to a landfill halfway across the state. Things like that can have some pretty quick impact. So it really has to go item by item and being willing to really put your nose down.
The REEF system really made a difference?
Pardon?
It made a big difference, the REEF system?
I wouldn't say it has made that significant of a difference yet, but if you look at the rising fuel costs, just all of these factors really add up, and the more self-sustaining a community is, the more economically efficient it's going to be. But yeah, that's a pretty heavy, big question. So
You did it, though.
Yeah, Mike, after you were elected, who were you able to look to for support in learning what the heck to do? Were there, say, the ex-mayor able to give you advice, or you just had to learn from everybody else who was there?
A couple other local mayors nearby helped me out.
Okay.
Their municipalities are much smaller than mine, so it wasn't that helpful. I'm also in graduate school at SUNY Albany in the public administration program. My advisor is a former county manager, and he helps me out a lot now. But for about a year there, yeah, I was struggling. Now that I'm in grad school, it helps me a lot. I meet people that are doing the same things, and so I can steal from them.
That way you can also be their guinea pig in a sense, by giving advice.
Well, you're the mayor of the village board, right?
Yeah.
There's like 4 or 5 members of the board?
There's a mayor and 4 trustees.
Okay. Are the trustees all, say, Republicans? Or is it divided?
It's divided. Everybody, it's nonpartisan. Nobody on my board is like real into either party. I think they're probably registered in one or the other. But the issue there is personalities. People will vote against things because they don't like that guy, or
So you really
His
ran
cousin
as
made
Mike
it.
Sellers, the local guy, not Mike Sellers, the green, even though people knew you were green.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Just one thing that Mike also pointed out to me was there was a vacant seat midterm, and he appointed someone to that position. So, that's something that happens quite frequently in local offices. And I know in terms of us in New Paltz, we knew different people that were ready to step in should something happen, or even just on the different boards. One quick example, Eric Roth is one of our local Greens, and I've been working closely with him for years. And I always thought he was someone I was going to run for office with. At the time, he wasn't prepared. He's now the director of our local historical society. But a situation came up. We hadn't had an ethics commission on paper, but it had never been filled out. And once we were in office, people just started coming forth with all these things that had been going on with some of the boards that really needed to get looked at. And until we came into office, they never felt that there was a mechanism in place for them to do something about what they saw as a corrupt situation. And my solution immediately was to call Eric and say, Eric, can you be on our ethics commission? Can you be the chair? And like that, he said yes. And he was someone that I knew the entire community would have faith in. Brittany knows him. He's incredible. It's just like, so knowing who you can have, if Mike has a vacant seat, having someone ready to, and having that conversation beforehand with people so they know to be ready to step in, that helps.